ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते. So welcome to our Saturday weekly session. We will continue on Bhagavad Gita chapter 12, Bhakti Yoga, and we will take verse number 6 and 7 to begin with. Verse number 6 reads like this: परंतु जो मेरे परायण रहने वाले भक्तजन संपूर्ण कर्मों को मुझ में अर्पण करके मुझ सगुण रूप परमेश्वर को अनन्य भक्ति योग से निरंतर चिंतन करते हुए भजते हैं, हे अर्जुन, उन मुझ में चित्त लगाने वाले प्रेमी भक्तों का मैं शीघ्र ही मृत्यु रूप संसार समुद्र से उद्धार कर देता हूं. Now, in the last session we discussed about Sagun and Nirgun, that those who worship the Supreme in form, those who do not worship him in form but worship him without form. Now this is a very profound explanation on this. Lord Krishna said in the previous verse that those who worship me in form, it's easier because for the people who are in form and their sense organs enable them to understand me in form. So it is easier for them to start with the upasana in form. So this is what he is further expanding now, because in case of what you call without form, it is extremely difficult for us to concentrate and to understand the Supreme. And that is possible only through very deep meditation. And therefore he is coming to the version which is generally more convenient for humans, and that is to worship the Supreme in form. So he says now there are certain things we must understand in these two verses. सगुण रूप परमेश्वर को अनन्य भक्ति योग से. Now सगुण रूप is that you have to form an image of the Supreme. Now we in India have several images. Some people like Krishna, some people like Rama, some people like Shiva, some people like Devi, some people, worship Hanuman, some people worship some other East Devata as we call them. Now there is nothing wrong in taking a form of your liking and then worshipping that form. Why do we do that? The reason is very clear. If you like some hero in your life, you naturally develop a feeling of kinship, you develop a feeling of, love and affection towards that hero. Like, in film industry, some people like certain heroes and they develop a relationship of admiration, relationship of love and affection towards that hero. Similarly, in the domain of the Supreme, if you like a particular image of the Supreme, I think it will help you in developing admiration. It will also help you in what we call developing actually love and affection for that image. And that is why we take an image which actually helps us in our concentration and also in our admiration of the Supreme. Now, without love and admiration of the Supreme, you cannot concentrate, because those images which you don't like, you obviously will not concentrate on those images. And that is why the Hindu traditions provide you options that whatever image you like of the Supreme most, You choose that image, concentrate on that image, and then develop love and affection for that image in whatever form you like. That's another region. Some people take the Supreme in the form of spouse, some people take as son or daughter, some people take as father or mother, some people take as friend. Like in this case, Arjun and Krishna, they are like friends. But like Miraj Bhakti is more like, spouse. So there are variety of forms you can choose. Uh, After selecting the image of the Supreme, you can also select that form, which enables you to concentrate more, also enables you to have higher admiration for the Supreme. Why that is needed? It is needed because once you have that kind of love and affection, once you have that kind of admiration, that image will always pervade your mind. Like somebody has a child, young child, you love that child very much. Now that image is constantly in your mind. Similarly, a particular image of the Supreme which you like more, that will constantly pervade your mind, and that is the meaning of Ananya Bhakti. Let me give that example once again. Like a mother loves her child very much. Now, whenever the mother is doing her work, a small little cry of the child will alert her and she will go and quickly take care of the child. Even in the middle of the night, the mother is sleeping. There may be heavy thunder and rain, the mother will not wake up. But when the child moves slightly in the bed, the mother immediately wakes up. It is because she is constantly pervaded by that child. Similarly, once we have that domination of the Supreme in our mind, through that love and affection, through that admiration, through that image which is inspiring, then it becomes easier for us to go into that Ananya Bhakti. Then he will constantly be in our thoughts, in our mind, in our action. So that is why Lord Krishna is saying that you can, you know, actually worship him. Upasana, as I mentioned earlier, Upasana means to be close to the Supreme. Up means close and asan means to sit. So you have to sit very close to the Supreme. Now, close to the Supreme means mentally you should be close to Him. And that is what here is saying, that if you do with Ananya Bhakti, concentrate on me, then, हे अर्जुन, मुझ में चित्त लगाने वाले प्रेमी भक्तों का, चित्त लगाने वाले means that Ananya Bhakti, that you have admiration, you have love, you have affection, and He is pervading your mind all the time. मैं शीघ्र ही मृत्यु रूप संसार सागर से उद्धार करने वाला होता हूं. Now, these three words also we should understand. Mrityu Roop. Now, actually, in our terminology, in Vedic terminology, this earth where we have our habitation is also called Mrityulok. Why? Mrityulok means the things are not eternal. They are subject to decay and destruction finally. That is why it is called Mrityulok. So everything which comes into this manifestation into this world will certainly decay, and then it will be destroyed, not destroyed in the real sense, but it will disappear and take another form. The form is transformed. So that is what happens. That is why it is called Mrityulok. Now, there's another word which is used actually. Let me go to the word sansar. Now, sansar samudra se, sansar sagar se. Now, this is used very often in our rural areas. Sansar sagar. What is sansar? Sansar, actually, the real meaning of word sansar is the thing which is circling all the time and which is changing. So, like it's a wheel or like a fan which is all the time circling. appearing in the same format again and again, but circling. And change is constant. So in Sansar, these are the two realities. The change is happening every second, and the change is cyclical. Like we are born, then we become, adult, teenager, and then we become adult, and then we become old, and then we die, and then again we take birth. So that is a cycle. A tree, you put a seed of a plant, it grows, it becomes a small plant, and then it becomes a tree. It has root and big branches, and it has leaves, it has fruit, and ultimately it produces another seed. When the tree dies, the seed again becomes, takes the same form and becomes a tree. So this is the cycle you will find in every single reality of life. Look at the water cycle, for example. There's water in the ocean. With the sun rays, it goes up, takes the form of clouds. With the wind, it moves around. Again, with condensation process, it falls in the form of rain or the snow, and then goes to the mountains and rivers and lakes, and then again flows back slowly to the ocean. So the cycle continues again and again and again. So that is the meaning of sansar. Sansar means constant change, and a change which is cyclical, which keeps rotating again and again. So this is the meaning of this. So the reason is that why do we have to get out of this cycle? Because otherwise we will be in this cycle of janm and mrityu. Birth and death will constantly continue to bother us. We will come here, we'll perform the similar activities, then we'll die, then we'll again come back, we'll perform similar action again, and then we'll die. This whole process will keep repeating for generations and generations and generations. That is why we say for thousands of lives we have been living in this world, because this is the very nature of sansar. Now there's another word which is used is sagars. Sansar sagar. Why it is used as sagar? You see, in sagar, you cannot swim. If you swim without any support, you are bound to drown sooner or later, because there are strong waves, there could be very strong winds, the water could be sometimes very cold. There may be in some places some small islands and rocks and things like that. So without support, you cannot swim in the ocean. You need support. You need either a noka, a nav, or a big ship, but you need some support. And that is why in this Sansar Sagar, we have all these, you know, what you call tornadoes and all these typhoons we have to face in life. In life, we face somebody has sickness, somebody has problem at home, somebody the son dies, somebody's education is incomplete, somebody is having a problem with the spouse. So we have variety of tornadoes, variety of typhoons and cyclones in our life. And therefore, we cannot cross this ocean of life or sansar without support. And that support comes from the Supreme. We need that support. And that is why Lord Krishna is saying that those who are dedicated to me, those who have Ananya Bhakti in me, I will help them to cross this Mrityu Roop Sansar Sagar. Now, this is a terminology which is absolutely profound, which is absolutely true in the real sense, and that is why these three words, Mrityu Roop, Sansar, and Sagar, must be properly understood. And similarly, the how we can have Ananya Bhakti and how we can choose a particular form of the Supreme. Now, before we proceed to verse number 8 and 9, I want to delve with this issue slightly in detail, because there's a Vedic terminology which we must understand here. Now, there are two things in this world. One is matter and one is consciousness. That is how we call it. The matter is the one which we can sense with our sense organs, and consciousness is the one which is actually beyond our sense organs, which is cannot be perceived or understood by our sense organs. Now there are variety of terminology used for these words. Now Sagun is basically matter, and Nirgun is basically uh, consciousness, directly consciousness. Now, what are the terminology? I think because this will clarify our concept very much. Now, first word which is used is anitya and nitya. Anitya is matter, nitya is the consciousness, the supreme. Anitya is subject to change, it's constantly changing, it is not eternal, it is, transforming every second. Like our body is anitya, but our inner self, the consciousness is nitya. Like, in a in different forms, things which are subject to change, that is anitya. Things which are eternal, that is nitya. So that is one terminology which is used in Vedic language. You will find in many Upanishads this kind of wordings. Then there's another terminology called Maya and Brahma. This denotes the same thing. Maya is basically matter, which is subject to change, and that is why it's called Maya. It is not the same all the time, it's constantly changing. Gives an illusion of eternity, but it is not eternal. And then Brahma is the supreme consciousness, universal consciousness, which is existing, which is not sensible with our sense organs. So Maya and Brahma is another term for the same. You can call it Sagun and Nirgun, or you can give any other terminology for that. Then there is a terminology called Drashya and Drashta. Now Drashya is what you can see. For example, you see this world, you see the mountains, you see the rivers, you see the cities around you. All that is Drashya. That is called matter. That is Drashya. And Drashta is the one that is awareness, your consciousness, which enables you to see. Drashta is not your eyes. Drashta is the eye of the eye, the consciousness which gives power to the eyes to see. So that Drashta is eternal, and Drashya is subject to change. So these are other two words which are used for the same realities in Vedic language. Then Vyakt and Avyakt. Vyakt is which has been manifested in this world. Now that is basically the matter which has been manifested. And Avyakt is the one which is consciousness, which has not been manifested, but which is actually the subject which sees what has been manifested. So you can actually see the manifestation around you. Now that manifestation is Drashya, but who is looking at that manifestation, who is seeing that manifestation, is Drashta. So Drashta and Drashya, again similar meaning, but two different terms. These are often used in Vedic language. Vyakt, Avyakt, exactly the same thing. Vyakt has been manifested. Avyakt is non-manifest in the sense that we cannot grasp it through our sense organs. Then Anatma and Atma. This is also the same term. Anatma refers to the matter. Atma refers to the consciousness. Then there's in Sankhya, philosophy, they have used the word Prakriti and Purus. Now, Prakriti is the manifest, which is matter, and Purus is the life force or the consciousness which provides life to the living beings. So this is the same terminology, Prakriti and Purus. Then in Bhagavad Gita, there are 3-4 terminologies which have been used. One is Kshetra and Kshetragya. Kshetra is the matter which has been manifest. Kshetragya is the one who is able to see that matter. So again, Drashta or Avyakt or consciousness is Kshetragya. Then Sat and Asat has also been used in Bhagavad Gita, also in Upanishad. Sat is the one which is constantly, eternally present, which is consciousness. Asat is the one which is constantly changing, subject to change, like as we discussed in the term sansar, or also in the term jagat. Another word we use for sansar is jagat. Jagat means jiski gati continuous hai, gat, which constantly changing. That's another word which is used for that. So this is sat and asat. Then we also have the word chal and achal. Chal is the one which is moving, changing, shifting, that is matter, and achal is the one which is constant, which is consciousness. So I thought I'll go into these wordings because sometimes these will help us in understanding the Sanskrit, what you call text and Hindi text properly. So we were going on Upasana and how we can choose our image of the Supreme, and why we choose a pleasing image, that image which pleases us, and how we can get involved in Ananya Bhakti by choosing that kind of image, and then how the Supreme can help us in transcending Mrityu Roop Sansar Sagar, so that we are out of this, perpetual chakra in which we remain entangled life after life. Now let's go to verse number 8. मुझ में मन को लगा और मुझ में ही बुद्धि को लगा, इसके उपरांत तू मुझ में ही निवास करेगा, इसमें कुछ भी संशय नहीं है. Now this word कुछ भी संशय नहीं है has been used 4 or 5 times in entire Bhagavad Gita. So this is one of the words here. Now in one occasion it has also been used that when you have done some good work in your life, even if you have to come back, that good work is not wasted, because when you take birth again, those good qualities are born with you, and you are born in a good family where you can nurture those good qualities. So this is there also Lord Krishna has used the word इसमें कुछ भी संशय नहीं है. Here also he is using this word इसमें कुछ भी संशय नहीं है. So मन और बुद्धि को मुझ में लगा. Now मन और बुद्धि is not easy, but as I mentioned, if we follow the a very enchanting image, and we remain constantly in love with that image, then it is easier for us to uh, get our mind and our intellect completely dedicated to the Supreme. Now, why it is not easy to get man and buddhi? Because man is always creating duality in our mind. For example, let's take a practical example. You want to go and choose a car for yourself. Now you go to one showroom, you like a car. Oh, no, no, no. Then somebody you come and discuss with your friend. No, this is good car, but this is the problem here. This can be better. The price is high. There may be some doubts there. Then you go to showroom number 2 and showroom number 3. You will always come out with some doubts, because the mind has the tendency of creating doubts, duality. Oh, this is good, but this is missing. This is fantastic, but the price is high. Some issue will come up somewhere. Similarly, if you want to choose a house, the same thing will happen. You choose your dress, you go to a showroom and want to buy a shirt, same thing will happen. This happens perpetually in every field of life, because the mind has that nature. Mind has the nature of duality, it always casts doubt on certain things, and as a result, it's not easy uh, for us to concentrate mind on certain thing very easily. So this is the one problem of mind. Second is mind is all the time changing. The perception of the mind is also changing. Someday you appreciate some thought, next day you do not appreciate the same thought. Someday you appreciate a person, next day you don't appreciate the same person. Some morning you like a particular, for example, you visit a new place, you like that place, and next day or after 2 days you don't like that very much. This is changing nature of the mind. So because of those two things, The duality and the changing nature, that creates problem, and it's not easy for us to concentrate the mind. But once you have love and affection, then these questions do not arise. When you have developed, close friendship, or you have developed close love, then these doubts do not arise. For example, you have beloved person in your life, you found some girl or a boy whom you really love. Now you do not look into the pros and cons, what will happen. Then you are dedicated, you are absolutely uh, you know in union with that person. So this is how the love can overcome this duality. That is one. Second, buddhi. Now buddhi also has the same problem. Buddhi is basically tark. You argue, you find out, how it can be done. Now the same lawyer can defend a murderer, the same lawyer can prosecute a murderer. They can find different arguments. You can find arguments for and against everything in life. Some people can prove you that there's no existence of God. Some people will prove you fully that there's an existence of God. Now you can find arguments for and against everything. So this is the limitation of buddhi. Limitation of buddhi is that arguments are pervasive. They can be found to justify or to criticize anything in life. And that is why you find this debate on TV channels, people supporting, finding arguments for their own, statements. You find the similar thing in writings of a lot of people. They call themselves intellectuals, but they invent arguments to support their thesis. They believe in something and then they invent arguments to support that. So buddhi enables you to invent those arguments. So through the process of arguments, you can never reach the God, because one argument will tell you that the God exists, another argument will tell you that it does not exist, and therefore you cannot reach a final conclusion so far as buddhi is active. So both the mind and the intellect, they have to be neutralized to develop, what you call devotion to the supreme. Now, so long as these two hurdles remain, you cannot reach the supreme, and that is why here he has used the word that man or buddhi dono mere mein laga. And that is possible only through love. That is possible only through shraddha. The another word which is used is shraddha. Shraddha is the word uh, which arises, the situation which arises after total dedication and love. If you have total dedication and love, the shraddha automatically follows. So this is the situation in which you can be dedicated to the supreme. Otherwise, in your mind there would be duality, whether what I'm doing is right, whether this is all waste. I've heard one lady from England was telling me one day that I was dedicated to the supreme. I believed in this particular guru and he taught me all this. And then I had some economic problem, and mother told me that, listen, now you are dedicated, pay, ask the supreme to pay your bills for that. Your bills are pending, you've not been able to settle. And then see, I was shattered. So you see, the intellect and mind can be shattered by circumstances which are prevailing around you. So that stability will arise only when you are able to neutralize mind and intellect. So that is the situation which Lord Krishna is telling us to develop in our habit, so that he can ultimately help us to transcend this world of, in which we live, and we reach what we call total liberation or moksha. Now, verse number 9. यदि तू मन को मुझ में अचल स्थापन करने के लिए समर्थ नहीं है, तो हे अर्जुन, अभ्यास रूप योग के द्वारा मुझको प्राप्त होने की इच्छा कर. Now here he is in the next verses, and this verse he is giving more options. He knows that it is not easy to direct your mind and intellect to the Supreme. It is not easy to develop Ananya Bhakti, and therefore he is giving options. In the next two verses also, he will give some more options. So the first option he is giving is that Abhyas Roop, that you have to constantly try for that. You have to practice. Like, uh, I've seen these young kids, they go for example, somebody is learning golf. Now the parents take the young child at the age of 6, 7 to the professional of a golf to teach them so that they can develop that swing or the practice of the golf. Similarly, those who want to play tennis, they take them to the tennis coach, and so that they can develop. Now that practice over a period of months help you to develop that devotion. I have seen children uh, becoming very good tennis player or very good golf player or very good basketball player through this kind of practice. We call it training here. That training is absolutely essential. That is what Lord Krishna is saying, that if we constantly engage in this training of dedicating our mind and intellect to the Supreme, then slowly we will move in that direction. So that is the one option he is telling, while realizing that it is not so easy, because temptations in this world are very strong, and getting over those temptations, transcending those temptations, is very difficult. And therefore he is telling us that yes, you identify an image of the Supreme, and then you uh, you know uh, become admirer of that image. You develop love and affection for that image, and then you will automatically be able to devote your mind and your intellect to the Supreme in that way, because that is an easier process. You have a form, because we are all in forms, and our sense organs enable us to recognize the forms, and therefore that is a process. But in that process also he realized that it is not easy, and therefore he is telling us that constantly we have to make an effort, and that effort will ultimately lead us to the Supreme. That is one in verse number 9. Now verse number 10 and 11 he gives other options. Now verse number 10, यदि तू उपर्युक्त अभ्यास में भी असमर्थ है तो केवल मेरे लिए कर्म करने को परायण हो जा। इस प्रकार मेरे निमित्त कर्मों को करता हुआ मेरी प्राप्ति को मेरे को प्राप्त होगा। Now this he also mentioned briefly in chapter 3 and also chapter 4 little bit, that this is what we call part of the Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga has two facets. The next facet will come in verse number 11. This facet is that if you are not able to dedicate your mind to the Supreme, your intellect to the Supreme, you want to become rich, you want to become powerful, you are dedicated in the world, you have all kinds of desires to excel in this world, don't worry. Even then there's a method. The method is that whatever action you are doing, that action should be dedicated to the Supreme. That is one way of doing it. That okay, you forget about mind, you forget about Ananya Bhakti, you forget about intellect, but if you, whatever action you are taking in life, whatever decision you are taking in life, whatever action follows, you dedicate that action to the Supreme, that I am doing it because you desire me to do this, and I am dedicating it to you. Now that is also not easy, because we want to take the pride of our action, we want to uh, uh, you know get recognition in the society through our actions. Therefore, this is not an easy process to dedicate it to the Supreme, but this is an option which is uh, applicable for those people who are not able to subdue their mind and intellect and do, constant, devotion to the Supreme. Those people can adopt this path. They dedicate all their actions to the Supreme, and then the Supreme will guide them and guide those people you know, beyond this sansar, mrityu roop sansar sagar. Then verse number 11, यदि मेरी प्राप्ति रूप योग यदि मेरी प्राप्ति रूप योग के आश्रित होके उपर्युक्त साधन में भी अगर तू असमर्थ है, उसमें भी असमर्थ है, तो मन बुद्धि आदि पर विजय प्राप्त होकर कर्मों का फल त्याग दे. Now this is which he had explained earlier in chapter 3, karmanyavadhikaraste ma phalesu kadachan. He says in any way you have no control over the results. Results are determined by the samasti. Action is taken by the vyakti. The individual takes action, and there are variety of factors in the world which determine the outcome of that action. So action is under your control, outcome is not under your control. So given that situation, why not take a simpler route that leave the outcome to the Supreme? फल को त्याग कर दो. Whatever comes, I'll accept it. I do this action, whatever result comes, I'll take as prasad of the Supreme, and I'll accept it. Now, these are the 4 different routes, in fact 5 in total. The first route he explained is, if you are believing in Nirgun, Nirakar, Brahman, in that case you have to do what we call meditation, and you become drashta, and the rest of the universe becomes drashya. Drashta and drashya, and then slowly you establish yourself in drashta, and then the rest becomes drashya, and the difference becomes very clear. But this is not an easy route, he said, and therefore you can choose East Devta, the one which is pleasing you, and then you dedicate to him and do upasana of the Supreme. Keep him all the time, in your mind, and you do that. That's the second route. Third route, he's saying that, of course, if you are not able to dedicate completely to the Supreme, then you have to do gradual practice. That practice should be done slowly. That is called abhyas. That is the training, like a sports person takes his training, or a person who is doing yoga or exercise, he takes his training. You go to a gym, you have a trainer. So the training helps you in getting there. So that is the third route, what you call route which you can adopt. Fourth route is that you can dedicate all your actions to the Supreme. Whatever you do, you say that this is being done because the Supreme desires me to do this, and I am doing it. If you do that, that is the fourth route. And fifth route is that even if you don't dedicate the action to the Supreme, dedicate the outcome to Him. Don't expect anything in return. And whatever comes, take it as prasad. Actually, the word prasad comes from there. We have a lot of names which are like Rajendra Prasad and Rajesh Prasad. That word prasad comes from there, that this is the God's gift which has come to me, and I take that result as the gift of the God, and then we continue to move forward. So this is how in this chapter up to verse number 11, he has explained in detail what are the routes which we can take to reach the Supreme. And all these routes, partially they have been explained in the past, but here a very systematic, step-by-step action has been indicated by him. Then we'll take verse number 12 before we finish today. मर्म को जानकर किए हुए अभ्यास से ज्ञान श्रेष्ठ है, ज्ञान से मुझ परमेश्वर का ध्यान श्रेष्ठ है, और ध्यान से भी सब कर्मों के फल को त्याग करना श्रेष्ठ है, क्योंकि त्याग से तत्काल परम शांति हो जाती है. Now, he is also saying that the route which is mentioned in verse number 11, that is to abandon the outcome, not to abandon but not to bother for the outcome. Just do concentrate on your action and don't worry about the outcome. Don't think about the outcome. Whatever comes, you accept it. He says it is better because this gives you complete peace immediately. It is absolutely my experience as well that when you do an action and expect certain results and things don't happen that way, you become frustrated, you become angry, you become absolutely disgusted. All kinds of things happen, but whatever comes and you accept it as as the gift of the god, then you are absolutely cool, calm. You will not get frustrated, you will become absolutely satisfied. Whatever comes. I have done from my side whatever I needed to do. That's it. So this is how you can become absolutely peaceful and tranquil immediately. And this doesn't require too much effort. This only requires very limited exercise at the end. So this is how we can do that. But before that, he's also saying that ज्ञान जो है अभ्यास से श्रेष्ठ है. Now, without knowledge, we cannot do even training, even the abhyas, even the exercise. Exercise also requires some sort of, knowledge. First, we have to, that is why we say we have to do Shravan and Manan. First, we have to understand the whole process in this universe, the whole, cycle of this universe, and then only we can devote ourselves to the training. So, for training, you need knowledge, and therefore, knowledge is superior to the training. And परमेश्वर का ध्यान करना, to dedicate himself to the supreme totally, to surrender to him, is even better than knowledge, because knowledge ultimately leads to arguments to some extent. Here, once you dedicate to the supreme, no arguments are needed, and therefore you become one with him straight away. So he says परमेश्वर का स्वरूप का ध्यान करना उससे ज्यादा श्रेष्ठ है, और फल का त्याग कर देना उससे भी श्रेष्ठ है. So now we can adopt, I think, this verse number 12. Give us a clue what we can do. It depends on the individual what path they want to adopt. Those people want to move slowly, they can continue to do the practice, they can take the abhyas route. Those who want to first understand the whole process and then get into the process, that is the Gyan mark, they can do that. And those who want to dedicate themselves to the Supreme Bhakti mark, then they can do that. And those who want to abandon the outcome of the task of your actions, that is the Karma mark, they can do that. And that is what he's saying, that the last one, abandoning or not caring for the outcome but accepting whatever outcomes as gift of the god, is very quick and it gives you total peace immediately. So it depends on you what route you want to adopt. But in these 12 verses, Lord Krishna has given very practical uh, suggestions to all of us how we can get to the Supreme, how we can overcome this Mrityu Roop Sansar Sagar, and how we can be totally liberated. So I would close this session here today. If you have any questions, kindly let me know. I'll try to answer to the extent I can. Thank you very much for joining on this Saturday afternoon.